Oh, I don't pay for suits. My suits are on the house, or the house burns down.
The rise of today's golden era of TV was synonymous with the ascendancy of one figure, the anti-hero.
A guy opens his door and gets shot, and you think that of me? No. I am the one who knocks.
Yet, following the ending of Breaking Bad in 2013 and Mad Men in 2015, in the wake of rapid shifts in our culture like the Me Too movement, audience sympathy for this badly behaving, often white male figure has seemed to wane.
You're not respectful of women. You're not really respectful of people.
Some have declared the age of the anti-hero over. One example, House of Cards' Frank Underwood was even cut out of his own show due to public fury over the alleged actions of the actor who played him, Kevin Spacey.
I should have never made you president.
Looking at the evidence though, have the anti-heroes really gone? In fact, acclaimed TV shows are still full of examples of this figure, perhaps more than ever. It's just that they're a new breed. So what's different about the Antihero 2.0?
I'm not gonna change!
Series starring an Antihero 2.0 consciously discourage audiences from fully identifying with or admiring this character.
I never wanted you in the first place!
And this distance the writing creates between the viewer and the protagonist makes it easier for us to critically evaluate or condemn the Antihero 2.0's actions.
Is BoJack super sketchy? Yes, he is!
The Antihero 2.0 is a lot more likely to be a woman,
Every breath you draw in my presence annoys me.
and to be written or created by more women or people of color. And whereas Antihero 1.0 series leaned into moral ambiguity, stories about an Antihero 2.0 can include stronger moral stances and judgments.
Any decision made, big or small, has an impact around the world.
Here's our take on the age of the Antihero 2.0 and how it reflects the moral sentiments of the world we're living in today.
I kind of think all you are is just the things that you do.
You're watching The Take. Let us know your take.
This video is brought to you by Mubi, a curated streaming service showing exceptional films from around the globe. It's like your own personal film festival streaming anytime, anywhere.
Do you feel like Frankenstein? Lacking humanity? Lacking human feelings?
From Tony Soprano to Jimmy McNulty to Don Draper to Walter White, there was a difficult man at the center of almost all of the most iconic prestige shows that ushered in peak TV. These stories, often created by reportedly difficult men as well, established the trademark qualities of modern televisual storytelling as we know it: a cinematic lighting and camera style, a realistic script exploring complex worlds of gray, explicit content that was previously considered off-limits to the small screen, and frequently a protagonist who fit the profile of the Antihero 1.0. Played by a charismatic actor, often the Antihero 1.0 is very smart, with a strategic intelligence that makes his moves suspenseful to watch.
If you don't like what is being said, change the conversation.
He keeps his thoughts and plans close to his chest, so his interior life is mysterious to us. He becomes the audience's gateway into a dirty, sensational world, offering us the vicarious pleasure of accessing something taboo or unknown. Whether it's a criminal underworld, a beautiful past that was only available to elite white men, or even what it feels like to kill someone.
We're in a situation where everybody involved knows the stakes. And if you're gonna accept those stakes, you gotta do certain things. It's business.
In a broader sense, the Antihero awakens something id-like and primal in the viewer, which might feel exciting.
I was alive.
I feel alive. Half sick with the thrill, the complete wrongness.
The story uses certain techniques to let the viewer feel justified in identifying with or rooting for this character.
We're soldiers. We follow codes, orders.
The Antihero 1.0 frequently has a code of sorts, his self-imposed discipline making him feel like a good guy, even though he's not.
Children, I could never do that. I have standards.
Some of these shows also strung audiences along with hopes that the Antihero might eventually improve and become a better person, no matter how many times they frustrated those expectations.
Are you a pilot? keep going to a lot of places and ending up somewhere I've already been.
Fast forward to the Antihero 2.0, and one of the key differences that stands out is that the story no longer minds its suspense from this question of whether the Antihero will ever become a good person.
Why do I have this feeling we both know that you'd be better off dead?
From the start, it does away with the idea that this character is going to improve themselves in a meaningful way.
It'll be me, Dad. Or you. But whoever it is, he'll wake up in hell tomorrow.
And the writing goes out of its way to remind viewers that this person isn't a role model.
You want to think of yourself as the good guy. Well, I know you better than anyone, and I can tell you that you're not.
Compare Mad Men's Antihero 1.0 Don Draper to BoJack Horseman's Antihero 2.0 BoJack Horseman. Both are self-destructive, womanizing alcoholics who live in empty, luxurious societies that make them miserable. Both spend most of their series running from their pasts.
And you keep running forward no matter what.
I have a life, and it only goes in one direction, forward.
While their internalized self-loathing hurts everyone around them.
I have poison inside me, and I destroy everything I touch.
I was surprised that you ever loved me.
But Mad Men keeps us holding out for Don Draper to make some modicum of personal progress. And its happy ending of sorts is that if Don can learn to love himself, that's a start.
I don't know if Don Draper can change, but I think that there is a point where the act of just admitting who you are is a big change.
Meanwhile, BoJack Horseman goes past the point where BoJack turns his life around and forces BoJack to reckon with how his past mistakes have hurt other people.
You've drawn us an outline of a person who doesn't think about others, a person who puts his own needs first. And over, other people get hurt.
It punishes its anti-hero, sending the message that the consequences of what he's done wrong don't disappear just because he's starting to feel better.
They can't get me on old shit. I'm a different person now.
So the contrast between how these two shows deal with their similar protagonists ultimately reveals that we were holding many of our Antihero 1.0s to an incredibly low standard. Or take Breaking Bad's Walter White versus Ozark's Marty Byrde. Both of these exceptionally smart men make a lot of money in the illegal drug trade while putting their families at risk, and are accused of being the devil himself.
You're the devil. Mr. White, he's the devil.
But Walt relishes being feared as a great man, even if that makes him evil.
Say my name.
His adventures in cooking meth are a journey of personal fulfillment.
I was good at it.
Breaking Bad sometimes slipped into making Walt feel aspirational, letting viewers get such a vicarious thrill out of his raising hell that some idolized this man who did terrible things.
I'm in the empire business.
Mr. White, is a meth empire really something to be that proud of?
Meanwhile, Marty's experience is one of constant fear, suffering, and guilt.
You proud of yourself?
No. Not for a second.
The show hardly encourages fantasies of trading places with him, and whereas Walt's genius is portrayed as almost magical, supernatural, mythic, Marty's is demystified, more like the workings of a computer.
I'm an accountant. I move numbers around. I'm the numbers guy.
Breaking Bad starts off by showing how Walt's been overlooked and mistreated by his callous world, making us feel his grievances, and slapping him with a terminal cancer diagnosis so that his lightning-fast transition into a ruthless criminal might feel like a semi-justified response to a deeply unfair situation.
Live life on your own terms.
But when we meet Marty, he's already been morally compromised for years. While Walt has been working 2 jobs to barely scrape by, Marty's a privileged guy, starting out his series with nearly $8 million of personal savings in the bank. So nothing here is designed to let Marty off the hook.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, let's move on.
Interestingly though, not glorifying or justifying Marty in any of the ways Walt was, doesn't make his story any less gripping to watch. Viewers can still relate to him, enjoy watching his unusual mind work, and wonder how he'll navigate impossible situations.
We sentimentalize property and kiss profits goodbye.
Even like or root for him, while understanding clearly that nothing about Marty's behavior is worth emulating.
Money is, at its essence, that measure of a man's choices.
Ironically, some Antihero 2.0 shows like Rick and Morty and BoJack Horseman have, despite being very critical of their protagonists,
will you just go away?
Still managed to attract passionate audiences who do idolize Rick or BoJack. But in both cases, the show's creators responded by going further to discourage this anti-hero worship. Rick and Morty co-creator Dan Harmon spoke out against toxic fans who trolled female writers on his staff. And the show's 4th season took pains to yet again foreground Rick's limitations and dissatisfaction.
All hail His Majesty, the saddest piece of garbage in the entire cosmos.
And BoJack Horseman includes a storyline that explicitly critiques the phenomenon of viewers falling for anti-heroes.
I don't want you or anyone else justifying their shitty behavior because of the show.
Sometimes women have to take over.
The Antihero 2.0 is far more likely than her predecessor to be a woman.
You are one cold-hearted bitch.
Looking back, there were several female examples of the Antihero 1.0. Carrie from Sex and the City, whom the New Yorker's Emily Nussbaum called the unacknowledged first female antihero on television, showed a pattern of acting irresponsibly while blaming others for her mistakes.
Do you ever think about how she'd feel if she found out?
Yes, I think about it all the time.
No, you don't. You think about what would happen to you if she found out. You don't think about her.
But her show, framed around her perspective, kept viewers firmly on her side. Weeds encouraged viewers to root for Mary Louise Parker's suburban housewife Nancy, even as she became an international drug smuggler, thanks to her initial motivation to support her family after her husband's death, her MILF charisma, and the exhilaration of the over-the-top world she allowed audiences to enter.
That was a real nice break dance.
Scandal, which might be viewed as a transitional example between 1.0 and 2.0, at times condemned the many bad things Olivia Pope did, but ultimately it still created an incredibly aspirational image of this character.
What's your gut say?
He didn't do it.
Your gut's never wrong.
And delivered her a happy ending with a bow.
Is Olivia, is she one of the good guys?
No, she's not one of the good guys, she's the best guy.
In recent years, though, we can see that the female antihero is becoming distinctly less aspirational and more Antihero 2.0.
I choose violence.
One strain of the antiheroine 2.0 is unquestionably, irredeemably bad from the start, to a degree that she's essentially a sympathetic villain. Her story, far from kidding itself that she's going to redeem herself, encourages us to enjoy the ways her bad behavior is either funny.
Oh, this tea is the perfect temperature.
Thank you, ma'am. I learned from an Afghani warlord.
We should put him on the payroll.
Well, you killed him in a drone strike.
Oh, well.
Or deliciously wicked.
Are you a bad person?
Yep.
Have you kidnapped me?
Yep.
In these stories, the antiheroine 2.0 has the potential to be scarier and more disturbing than her male equivalent, because she counters our cultural assumptions about women's deeper nature.
I'm willing to let your child wither and die inside you if that's what's required. Now tell me, am I really the sort of enemy you want to make?
Another subtype of the antiheroine 2.0 is the messy, struggling woman.
I have a personality disorder. It's not something I have, it's something I am. This is what I feared my whole life. I'm broken.
Featured on one of what Gawker's Richard Lawson termed Ladies with Problems shows, she's not a bad person by any means, but she does questionable things and makes bad choices that can frustrate the viewer.
I spent most of my adult life using sex to deflect from the screaming void inside my empty heart.
Often she's dealing with mental health issues or grief, while she might showcase exceptional intelligence or insight that's not entirely unrelated to her mental or emotional problems.
It was 10 years ago. Everyone missed something that day.
Everyone's not me.
Another subcategory of today's antiheroine 2.0 is the rich white woman antihero. Frequently, this privileged woman's central sin is using her relative power or wealth, and often considerable intellectual gifts, for her own self-interest.
Serena, you built this whole world just so that you could have someone.
While enabling the continued oppression of those who have less, as well as of her own gender in general.
This is the false lure of the women's liberation movement. Because the fact is, girls, the ERA will not solve your personal problems.
Eventually, this character is often forced to confront that the status quo she's defending directly disempowers her too, and she's been living in a gilded cage.
These housewives are the last gasp of the patriarchy, brainwashed to believe that if they don't play the game, they will lose the love and protection of men.
Anti-heroine 2.0s are often married women who might not be acting like ideal wives or mothers. A number of these characters are also married to male anti-heroes, their marriage becoming a sort of partnership in crime.
We're just business partners.
In Ozark, Wendy Bird bears superficial resemblance to Walter White's wife Skylar. Both are blonde mothers who have affairs and who, like their husbands, are fiercely intelligent. But a significant number of Breaking Bad's viewers expressed outright hatred for Skylar due to the way that the show sometimes painted her as the annoyingly moralizing wife who would get in Walt's way.
What I need is for you to climb down out of my ass.
And over the course of the story, the initially strong Skylar was traumatized, dominated, and spiritually broken by her husband.
I'm not your wife. I'm your hostage.
Meanwhile, Ozark encourages audiences to sympathize at least as much with Wendy as with Marty, as she becomes a major player who frequently outshines her husband in her talents and ruthlessness as a criminal mastermind.
Always better to be the person holding the gun than the one running from the gunman.
Just as Walt was driven by feeling that his vast potential had been neglected, Wendy finds that crime offers a satisfying outlet for her considerable political skills, which were being wasted in her former life as a law-abiding housewife in Chicago.
Because fighting for your life makes every other thing you ever did before seem extremely dull.
The same show also makes us feel for another very different anti-heroine, Marty's protege, Ruth Langmore, a young person trapped by deeply entrenched generational poverty.
This is your laugh. And I'm mom.
Arguably, female characters are naturally suited to be anti-hero 2.0s because viewers are culturally primed to be judgmental of bad behavior in women. So, the Anti-Hero 2.0's critical distance is built in already.
I am 13 pounds overweight and it has been awful for me my whole life!
Here's the world's smallest tiny violin playing My Heart Bleeds for You.
And what's even more radical about the Anti-Heroine 2.0 than her more justified or admirable predecessors is that her series no longer worries about that pesky likability concern that has been plaguing female characters since forever. Crazy Ex-Girlfriend creator Rachel Bloom told E! News that when it comes to her character, Rebecca Bunch, I have never given a shit about people liking her because she's meant to be somewhat, at times, a bubbly anti-hero. What I care about is if they understand where she's coming from.
Be yourself. What? Who? No! Ew! Ugh, who wants to be that?
By finally getting free of the pressure for female characters to be likable, these deeply imperfect female characters normalize the reality that women, like all people, have very major flaws. And that doesn't make them any less worth thinking about or learning from.
I just wonder if you ever look back at your life and have regrets. Because I do. I have some regrets.
We all behave in ways that are incredibly unlikable, even in our own eyes.
No one could ever hate me as much as I hate myself, okay? So any mean thing someone's gonna think of to say about me, I've already said to me about me probably in the last half hour.
As Bloom said of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, any moment where the audience doesn't like Rebecca, Rebecca also does not like Rebecca.
Stop being so hard on yourself.
I mean, you're right. I am hard on myself. God, it's one of my worst qualities. God, I'm such a dumb loser, hard on myself, bitch.
Still, the mere existence of the female anti-hero is aspirational. Across movies and TV, anti-heroines of all sorts have paved the way for the endless stream of boringly perfect, strong female characters to yield to interesting female characters.
Turns out I'm crazy.
If we look back to past periods when the anti-hero has been prominent, they often coincide with broader cultural trends and artistic breakthroughs. The morally confused protagonists of 40s and 50s film noir navigated the literal darkness of a war-ravaged society in which nothing appeared black and white anymore.
For 16 years, I've been living in dirt, and take it from me, some of it's bound to rub off on you. You get to hate people.
The angry young man of 50s and 60s British social realist films expressed masculine frustrations and dissatisfactions with what society expected of them.
Don't let the bastards ground you down, that's one thing I've learned.
And throughout film history, westerns and gangster movies have used glamorous or sympathetic anti-heroes to question what the American dream is really all about.
It's not personal, son. It's strictly business.
In the late 90s and early 2000s, Antihero 1.0 shows felt fresh because their graphic, realistic portrayal of sex and violence represented a radical break from previous TV norms and offered new creative opportunities for honesty and three-dimensionality. When Tony Soprano killed a man with his bare hands in the 5th episode of his show, this went against all common wisdom of what a character could do without being rejected by audiences.
Your hand is bleeding. Dad, where did you go? You saw that man, didn't you?
I cut it on the screen door.
But continuing to duplicate the same envelope-pushing content can quickly transform it into the opposite. While Sopranos, Sex and the City, 6 Feet Under, and The Wire were hailed as revolutionary for their frank depictions of sexuality, Entourage and Game of Thrones later received backlash for gratuitous female nudity that was there purely for titillation. In fact, the prevailing attitudes toward TV nudity and sexual violence changed so noticeably from the start to the end of Game of Thrones' run that the show's creators attempted to adjust how they dealt with these topics in later seasons.
Take off your clothes.
Today, prestige TV is still full of the same stylistic trademarks and badly behaving characters that featured in the early 2000s. Yet, the emotional and moral messages sent by the storytelling are very different to what The Sopranos or Mad Men made us feel.
Incident, no real person involved. That means it's a sex worker or a migrant worker at a foreign port.
No real person involved.
Those older shows remained ambiguous right up to the end, even sometimes resolving with infamously inconclusive finales. But while today's antihero shows surely still include many ambiguities, they also go out of their way to make moral statements and even judge their characters.
I'm the one who has suffered the most because of the actions of BoJack Horseman.
You've suffered.
Yeah, I have.
The most?
Ultimately, the age of the Antihero 1.0 was about breaking down boundaries and opening up a world of gray. Now, the age of the Antihero 2.0 seeks to impose new boundaries and restore some moral black and whites.
You have scared the women of America into believing something that is not based in reality. You need to cite a case to support your arguments, so cite the case.
Well, I think it was Foley versus Langham, or...
Did you just make up a
I'm
case?
not a lawyer.
One important way these newer stories successfully distance us from Antihero 2.0s is by giving more point-of-view time to other characters with a more sophisticated or intact moral compass.
You're responsible for your own happiness, you know?
Good Lord, that's depressing.
No, it's not.
I'm responsible for my own happiness. I can't even be responsible for my own breakfast.
Thus giving credence to a coherent, principled worldview that challenges and critiques the antihero's outlook.
A good mother makes good choices.
You didn't make good choices. You had good choices. Options that being rich and white and entitled gave you.
Because we feel for both the antihero and the more moral characters they clash with.
How many women are going to be forced to give birth to babies they can't afford to feed while we wait for housewives who have no idea what it's like to have to work to survive, to feel comfortable with women having power?
We're forced to think consciously and rationally about where our loyalties lie and why. We're stimulated to engage in a moral debate within ourselves.
Being a grown-up means doing things you don't want to do, all the time.
We can end up feeling greatly for the Antihero 2.0 and engaging deeply with their story, but not rooting for them to win their fights, and understanding that we would not approve of these people or want to know them in real life.
You're not a killer. You have to be a killer.
All of this reveals that, despite long-standing wisdom, we don't engage with characters only because we like them, admire them, or want to be them. Antihero 2.0 stories more analytically and honestly dissect why people don't do the right thing, and what truly drives them, underneath all the layers of lies that they tell themselves.
Evil comes when the righteous path is so hidden It just looks like there's only one way out.
The Antihero 2.0 no longer simply cheers on the demons in us. It firmly tells us there is right and wrong, and the person we're watching is no good. Yet it draws us in anyway, and makes us ask which angels or devils in our minds and souls we're going to follow in our own lives.
The truth is, Adam and Eve probably grabbed that apple because they were starving, and it was the first tree they saw.
If you're new here, be sure to subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified about all of our new videos. This video is brought to you by Mubi, a streaming service we love. Every day, Mubi premieres a new film. Whether it's a movie you've been dying to see or one you've never heard of before, there is always something new to discover. So in this world where it's very easy to spend hours debating what you should watch, Mubi is like having a really cool friend with amazing taste in movies, making it so much easier for you. They feature hard-to-come-by masterpieces, indie festival darlings, influential art house and foreign films, lesser-known films by your favorite famous directors, and more. Plus, you can even download the films to watch offline, and there are no ads, ever. Right now on Mubi, you can check out the winner of the Bright Future Award at last year's Rotterdam Film Festival, Around the World When You Were My Age. Director Aya Koretsky's enchanting personal documentary retraces her father's world travels in the 1970s. We can't recommend Mubi highly enough. You can try it out now for free for a whole month. Just click the link in the description below.